This What's Working with Cam Marston podcast is brought to you courtesy of Michelob Ultra Beer.
They say consistency is the key to success. They weren't wrong. So how about grabbing a beer that's consistently smooth, consistently refreshing, and consistently light? You might just find that the road to success can be pretty enjoyable. Michelob Ultra, the perfect balance of taste and refreshment, and only 2.6 carbs and 95 calories. It's only worth it if you enjoy it. Enjoy responsibly. Anheuser-Busch Michelob Ultra Light Beer, St. Louis, Missouri.
Welcome to What's Working. Let's do this. Got another show coming up for you today, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. I think you'll enjoy this one. I hope you enjoy them all. This one comes from an ad agency out of New Orleans that reached out to me and said, hey, I think we got a story for you about a pizza chain that's expanding into Alabama and how they go about that expansion. So I was curious, kicked the tires a little bit, looked at the materials that they sent me, and I am indeed interested. So in segment 2, when we come back from the first break, I will have Casey Biehl with Fat Boys Pizza. They're trying to expand across the Southeast, and I think it'll be an interesting story or a conversation of how do I expand? Where do I go? What am I looking for in specific markets to tell me whether my brand will work there or not? How do I go into a new market and find employees? Because everybody needs employees right now. What do we offer those employees? What is the workplace culture? If I'm starting from brand new, how do I create a healthy workplace culture? So this will be an interesting conversation when we come back from break with Casey Biehl, Fat Boys Pizza. They're based out of New Orleans. We're going to do it via Zoom. But until then, I came across, this report was sent to me. It's from Kilo. I think the way to say it is kilo.health. I must admit that I have no idea who they are. And I reached out to the person that sent me the report and said, who are you? What is your angle here? What is your plan for the report? Why are you doing this? And got no reply. So without any context of who they are, I'm going to give you some of the readings here in the Kilo.Health 2023 Healthy Workplace Index. The front page says it's identifying the U.S. states that promote optimal workplace well-being in 2023. Now, What's Working with Cam Marston is broadcast across the state of Alabama. The podcast goes all over the country, but the broadcast audience is across the state of Alabama. And if you're from the state of Alabama or have lived here for some amount of time, you likely have an indication or a hunch of where Alabama is ranked in this report in all these different categories. So I'm going to go through it here, and here are the categories. Number 1, workplace wellness. It's category 1, workplace policies and regulation. It talks about smoking policies, binge drinking being a part of the problem in workplaces, accident reporting, who reports all the accidents versus those that don't, OSHA approved plan. Category 2, work-life balance. Category 3, health and wellness. Category 4, environmental factors. Again, if you're from Alabama, you likely know where we're going to end up here. It's something that we've gotten used to now, but I'm going to combat it in 1 second. Before I do that, the top 3 states of healthy workplace index: number 1, New York; number 2, California; number 3, New Jersey; and number 4, just dump 1 through 3. Then the 3 worst states of the healthy workplace index. 3 worst states: number 1, West Virginia; number 2, Alabama; number 3, Arkansas. Hey, we weren't last. And it goes into this thing, and we get into workplace policies and regulations. It's really a well-done report. I'm not sure I agree with the outcome, but it's a well-presented report. Workplace policies and regulation at the top of the list, the state of Washington. At the bottom of the list, the state of Texas. Work-life balance at the top of the list is California. At the bottom of the list is Wyoming. Alabama, let's see if I could find Alabama real quick, is about midway through. Health and wellness at the top of the list is North Dakota. Bottom of the list is West Virginia, and Alabama's about third to the bottom of the list. So here we go again. And let me add to this. We're coming up to break. I was at 30A this past weekend at the beach. The license plates were full of people coming from the states at the top of the list, vacationing here. My conversations with other business people. I had Philip Burton on not long ago. His business is recruiting people from at the top of the list to come here. And yet we're related at the bottom, and yet here they come. They continue to flood into our state. All right. Casey Biehl will be with me when we get back from break. You're listening to What's Working. Find What's Working as a podcast if you'd like. Go to what'sworkingcam.com. It lives there. Be right back.
When making the largest investment choice in most families' financial portfolio, you need a realtor who truly understands the market and can negotiate favorable terms and conditions. I'm Angelo DiPaola, the Coastal Connection with eXp Realty, the preferred real estate advisor for buying or selling along the Gulf Coast. For full access to the MLS in Mobile, Baldwin County, Pensacola, Destin, or Panama City, just Google Angelo DiPaola, the Coastal Connection.
We're back. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. I'm sitting in the studio here in Mobile, Alabama, and Casey Biehl is sitting in his office in Metairie, Louisiana. He's the chief operating officer for Fat Boys Pizza. They have aggressive expansion plans, and I want to talk to him about those plans and how they determine where to go, when to go, how they find workforce, how they keep workforce, all the challenges that so many of us are facing right now. They're stepping into a new market to face those challenges. But before we get into that, Casey, thank you for your time and welcome to What's Working.
Thank you. I'm excited to be on with you, Cam.
Well, tell me a little bit about your background before we get into these weeds. What got you into food service? Is this your first foray into the first food service? Tell me where you learned your craft.
Yeah, well, I think many people in this industry, they get into food service by default. It's often for many young individuals, it's an into a means and an opportunity to have some discretionary income. So I kind of followed that career path, played some collegiate sports and needed some discretionary income and found my way bartending. And before I knew it, I got a real job and learned that I much rather be in the hospitality spectrum. So that evolved into where I am today. Over the last several years, I've been an executive with Caesars Entertainment, had the opportunity to do some really neat projects with that organization, including the opening of Caesars Palace Dubai, where I was on the opening team that opened up several concepts out in Dubai, including Gordon Ramsay's Hell's Kitchen, as well as being on the executive team that was identifying the food and beverage concepts that are going to be going into the new Caesars New Orleans as it transitions from Harrah's New Orleans into the Caesars New Orleans. It must be difficult to try to find something when it comes to a food and beverage concept in New Orleans that will stand out. The place is it is a geographic food and beverage concept. So it must be challenging to find something that go into there that makes people look twice. Boys, you nailed it. You know, we sat in that room when we were trying to identify the future of that property and how to partner. And there was many people, especially our constituents from the Vegas market, that were advocating for us to lean heavily into the New Orleans food and beverage scene. And as a local, I actually said, I think that's a mistake, because we'd be competing against the authentic, gritty, real nature of these storied restaurants that are the real deal, and trying to replicate that in a sterile environment of a casino. From my perspective, I sat there and debated that with the president of the company in one particular meeting. And we did eventually lean a little bit out and made some decisions, partnered with Emerald Lagasse on a concept that should be opening relatively soon. I'm not with them anymore, obviously, so I kind of lost track of the timeline, but then kind of lean into the celebrity centric chef concepts and try to bring them into the same unit in that building.
What attracted you from what sounds like a pretty impressive career, meeting with the top level leaders of Caesars, traveling the world, and suddenly you've been attracted out of that into Fat Boys Pizza? Tell me about that transition.
Kind of an interesting story. And I mean, I'll first start with the timeline on this. I think for many professionals, COVID kind of offered some perspective and also created some challenges in the workplace for people. And that essentially was the door that opened up that allowed for me to decide to resign from Caesars and join Fat Boys. But I've been friends with the founder and owner of Fat Boys, Gabe Corciani, for the last 15 years. And our sons went to the same school together. They both played sports at the school, and we were watching our kids and were introduced and started talking. That evolved into a friendship, a workout partner, and somebody I spent every morning with. And Gabe's a very successful business person. And several years into our relationship, he went to Miami, got out of his boat at a marina, and saw this pizza place that had a line wrapped around the block.
No kidding.
He walks out, sees this pizza place, lines wrapped around the block. And he says, boy, let me go check this out. And that truly was the inspiration behind Fat Boys. I remember him coming to me and going, I know what I want to do. I want to open up a pizza place. And I said, Gabe, go buy a building, go do something else. Do not get in the restaurant space. It's hard. Yeah. And he, if you know Gabe, you know that one thing that he is he's determined and strong-willed. And it was really interesting to see this thing evolve. I remember telling him, I said, Gabe, if you do this, what's going to happen when the manager doesn't show up? You're going to be at the restaurant running a shift, opening up the doors. Like, you're going to make $100,000 a year, and it's not going to be worth the effort. And lo and behold, and at that time, as it was evolving, he said, Casey, why don't you come on my team? I'll give you 49% of this business. I want you to run it. And at that time I said, I don't want anything to do with pizza. You got it. I have my career, and I wish you well, and I'll give you some guidance and consulting along the way to make sure my friend is successful. And he opens up Fat Boys Pizza on Metairie Road, and immediately just a huge hit. And I truly did grow a new admiration for Gabe and his family. He was in there every single night, every single morning, every single day, while juggling his other businesses. And he was really, really the driving force behind that success. And then it started to evolve for him. And he realized that he may have something that has the legs to grow. And it went from the idea of just having a restaurant and having a successful concept to something that now we're looking to scale. And that scalability is what really was the catalyst behind me jumping on board.
So I have a question for you. What is the concept of Fat Boys? Tell me, so it's not here in Alabama yet. Describe it to me so that I can get a sense of why that line wrapped around the block.
Sure, absolutely. The at the core of Fat Boys Pizza is house-made product. We make, if you walk in any one of our kitchens, we're going to be making our own dough inside of that kitchen. We're going to be making our own sauce. We literally take fresh basil leaves every day, pluck the leaves off the stems, put it into our mixing buckets, weigh them out, and make our own sauce. We roast the garlic every morning, and we use a garlic oil on a pizza, and we use the garlic cloves in the sauce. We get the finest ingredients that we can possibly get. And then we take that and ensure that we have at the core really, really quality ingredients. And then we put it in this life-size form. We offer 30-inch pies, and a single slice is 16 inches. Yeah, 30 inches is a robust size pizza.
Yeah, that's a wagon wheel.
Yeah, it's massive. And, I think it's one of those things that when people come in and they see it, the marketability of it has been really prolific for us. When you see something that large, it does kind of surprise you.
Yeah, I bet it does. And you have how many locations in Louisiana now?
In Louisiana, we currently have 7 locations.
And where else? Anywhere else outside of Louisiana?
Yeah, Hattiesburg. We're
okay.
in Hattiesburg, and we have one currently open in Houston, in Richmond, and we have a second location in Houston under construction in Katy, Texas.
Yeah,
and then we have signed leases for 2 more locations in that market.
Are these franchise concepts?
No, we haven't quite done any franchises yet. We've entertained that. We're set up for it, but we're still in the process of identifying the right partners to go that route with.
Now, when you look at new markets, what are you looking for? I know that Mobile and New Orleans are we kind of consider New Orleans a sister city with all the same influences that have created both of these cities. But why are you looking? What do you look for? Is it a demographic measurement? Is it just simply a logistics measurement? What makes you determine this should be our next market?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's several nuances that go into what makes sense for us. It's the old adage of location, location, location. So we need to find locations that make sense for our concept. We have learned that our demographic, we opened up at LSU campus across the street from USM in Hattiesburg. And I think there is a lot of people that identify pizza with college students. But as we've evolved, we've learned that our true core customer are families. We do better near high schools. We do better in areas that have a dense suburban market around there. If you go into any one of our restaurants, the dichotomy of kids with adults, and we have bars in our restaurants, and you get this really unique experience where we have arcade games and the kids go run and play their arcade games. The parents are watching the sports that are on TV, maybe with a cocktail or a beer or a glass of wine. And pizza is a social experience. And what you see when people have pizza and they're sharing a whole pie together, there's often a lot of communication that's going on and just this natural organic component that draws people together. So we look for areas that can provide that type of family type environment for us. And from a marketing perspective, Cam, what we do is we get woven into the fabric of the community. You'll see us, like I said, in high schools. You'll see us kind of doing more grassroots thing. We partner with Children's Hospital. We work with the animal adoption clinics. We do a lot of things that are more grassroots versus big, large branding opportunities. So
is it safe to say that 50% of the reason people come into a Fat Boys Pizza is the taste of the pizza? The other 50% is the atmosphere. Is it equal like that, or does one have more dominance?
It's hard for me to articulate what are the primary drivers for the individuals. Here are some statistics about pizza. 93% of Americans have eaten pizza in the last month.
Wow, 93% of 315 million people.
Yep.
Casey, we're coming to break. Let's wrap this up and start it. I want to hear more of these statistics. So we're going to go into the break. I've got Casey Biehl on with me. He's the COO of Fat Boys Pizza. We're talking about how they choose to expand and what they look for as their expansion begins. We'll be right back. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. Sitting with Cajun Mike, owner E3 Termite and Pest Control. Cajun Mike, there are people I know that think their house is fully protected because there's some bait stations around the house. What's your thoughts?
My thought personally is bait stations do work. However, I do not believe in them as a standalone product.
What else do they need?
We do 3, 4, sometimes 5 or 6 treatments on a house. We will do a true liquid perimeter treatment. We do hollow void treatments, and we use bore care on wood when we can access it.
It's a thorough treatment, top to bottom, it sounds like, much more so than the bait station.
That is correct.
How do they find you, Cajun Mike?
They can find me at 251-850-PEST or e3pest.com.
e3pest.com. Hey, this is Cam Marston. My What's Working radio show has given me a front row seat to what's going on in today's workplace and workforce. I'm taking what I've learned and delivering it as a live presentation. If your company, team, or association is looking for a speaker to kick off or wrap up your event, check out my presentations at my website, cammarston.com, or find me on YouTube to watch some sample videos. You can expect actionable and relevant content delivered with lots of humor. On my site, you can find my client list and testimonials. I welcome your calls and your emails. Reach out. Let's find a way to deliver fresh, thought-provoking, actionable content to your event. Casey Biehl is on the other side of a Zoom call with me right now. He's in Metairie, Louisiana. He's the Chief Operating Officer of Fat Boys Pizza. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston, and before the break, Casey was giving us some statistics about pizza, and it truly took my breath away. 93% of Americans, 315 million people, maybe more, have had a pizza in the past 30 days. Is that correct, Casey?
That is correct.
And that's a lot of folks. And it also says something, I think, about Americans. It may explain why we look the way we look.
Yeah. So, kind of tying that back to how do we select a location? What are the drivers to what brings people into it? Pizza can be romanticized. Pizza can be something that's super easy for people. There's so many factors on why people choose pizza. And so for me to articulate exactly what are the driving forces, that's challenging. But I will say, I think what I experience when I'm in our restaurant is this really unique just synergies that are created with multiple different types of classes of people inside of the same restaurant that are doing very similar. The catalyst behind the restaurant and why they're there is the pizza, but the ancillary factors definitely are components of what drives them to the locations.
So you've mentioned something here that my poor listeners have heard me talk about over and over again, and that was during COVID. The pizza place not far from us, and Casey and I, prior to the recording, we're talking about Spring Hill College, which is not far from where I sit right now, was Cortland's Pizza. And it was the neighborhood pub. And you could go in there at any one point and find people that you knew. I used to love to sit in there and order a pizza and have a beer while the pizza arrived and then take it home to the family. Before and after high school football games, Cortland's was jamming, and they couldn't find people during COVID, and they had to shut their doors. And people still in this community here, me being the leader of it, are lamenting the demise of Cortland's Pizza. So it was an family environment as you think about it. It was exactly the way you described it. And it sounds like your intention is to recreate that in every new opening store that you do. We want this to be a collecting place. Is that right?
It is. I do have a caveat to that, though. Yeah. I think smart businesses run parallel paths. They adapt. And we recently opened up 2 what we're calling express locations to counter some of these challenges that are mitigating factors that I think everybody faces. And on our express models, we have indoor dining. We have all of the aspects that we do in a full service restaurant, but it's on a smaller scale, 2,300 square feet versus 4,000 square feet. And with those restaurants, we to mitigate some of the workforce challenges that everybody has faced, we're offering a drive-through, a limited menu, and it's really been eye-opening because we can run it with much less occupancy costs, much smaller menu, and consumers are telling us they love these drive-throughs, and 40% of the business is coming by way of the drive-through. Another 20% is coming through the takeout platforms or the delivery platforms. And then the last little makeup of it is the dining experience, which, is surprising.
You mentioned workforce challenges and the drive-through kind of addressing that in some way. I told you about Cortland's, and they couldn't find the employees needed to keep the doors open. I've got 3, maybe 4 advertisers right now whose advertisements, and this is not in the show, these are advertisements that are outside the show on different stations, but they are advertising for labor. They can't find people and have gone to some very non-traditional ways to advertise for labor. How are you guys recruiting people to Fat Boys to come to work? What is I use this term somewhat pun intended, what is the secret sauce that you're using to get people to want to work for you?
Well, I am proud that we've never had to close our doors in any one of our restaurants for a single day or a single shift because we haven't had enough labor. I think at its core, and I don't want to simplify this, but I really do believe from a culture standpoint, a big reason why I made this leap into this organization is to make sure we surround ourselves and leadership that treats our employees as equals, treats them well. We adapt to the different personalities in the workforce today. There's all, you walk in one of our restaurants and there might be somebody that's a baby boomer, and there's going to be Gen Z. There's going to be this really diverse workforce. And I think we're in tune to that, and we make sure we provide them the communication that they expect. What the job entails. We have flexible hours. So, and we are fortunate that, a lot of our workforce, can be done with very little skill. We've found ways to augment some of our, skilled and technical components of the job, with innovations, with technology that we've implemented into our restaurants that mitigate the need to have highly technical pizza cooks, with some of the innovation that we've layered in. So, long-winded answer to a little bit of all of it. The one thing that we did that was unique, and it wasn't our idea, but is our entire staff shares in a tip pool.
The entire staff.
Correct. So, and it's interesting. So, we've all, as consumers, been into it, whether it's a smoothie place or a restaurant, where in our concept, you walk up and the first thing you do is you go to a cashier, you put your order in. We give you a number, or we give you like a text number or something. And then you find a seat on your own, and then we bring the food to you. We receive, on average, about $3 to $6 more an hour to contribute to the hourly employees by way of the consumer who's tipping us as soon as they order their food, which is pretty fascinating. It's on average about an 8% increase to the average check that we're able to take and push back to the hourly workforce. So the $12 an hour employee in some applications are getting $15, $16 an hour. So that helps as well.
So when I come into your store, I could order the pizza. There's likely a screen or some sort in front of me, and it's saying, do you want a tip? What is the tip amount? Even though the service has not been completed, even though
it's fascinating.
And it's a guilt. It's guilt. And I had this happen to me, and I wrote a commentary about this for public radio. I had this happen to me at the Boot Store. Do you know where the Boot Store is in New Orleans? Right next to the Tulane campus. I went in there, bought a beer retail, and they said, what do you want a tip? I said, I bought this retail. And even then I had to wait in line. It's an odd thing, and there are mixed feelings about it. But you think, from what you're telling me, this is a retention tool. One of the retention tools that you offer for your workplace.
It truly is. Look, we do a great job with Fat Boys Pizza it's fascinating to me because every single customer tells me you guys have the best service. We have a platform called Tattle that we've implemented, and it asks guests for feedback on our platform. The hospitality average on Tattle for guest surveys is 4.24. Our average store is at 4.89. Mm-hmm. And we're competing against platforms that are offering full service, that are getting 4.24. And it's because I think the consumer expectations when they walk in our restaurant and they're ordering from a cashier and they're finding their own seat, and most of our guests feel obliged to even bust their own tables, is they go get their own drink. We don't even make their drink. We give them a cup, they walk, they self-serve drinks. And it's interesting from a psychological perspective, because coming from more experience with fine dining and different full steps of restaurants, people would complain if the water wasn't there in time. People would complain if their reservation wasn't ready and they had to wait 5 or 10 minutes. But in this application, because the expectations are so low, it's pretty fascinating that the consumer, from a psychological perspective, no expectations. When they walk in the door, we pride ourselves. We say hello. everybody that walks in. We say goodbye and thank you to everybody that leaves.
Yeah.
The guest is bussing their own table. We'll grab it. We have that for you. And they're blown away by that customer service, which and factually is really minimal.
So tell me this, so many organizations that have remote locations, and we'll call them these independent operations of yours, the personality of the location is often dictated by the person who's the leader in that location. In other words, the culture comes from one individual. And now that you have, my addition was right, 7, 8 locations?
Yeah,
9 locations. You run the risk of having someone leading the location in, let's say, Hattiesburg, who doesn't champion these values that you're talking about. So the question, we'll get to the question eventually, how do you keep these leaders of each of these locations with the right culture in mind?
So our structure is they're all corporate owned stores. The leader of each restaurant their title is the operating partner. The entire management team, including the operating partner, participates in a profit share. So when certain thresholds are met, they participate in the bottom line contributions. So we believe that does create an ownership atmosphere for the entire management team. Mm-hmm. But from a culture standpoint, I think that really goes back to when we're hiring people, we're making sure that they're good human beings first.
Yeah.
Then we follow that up with the technical skills. When we're interviewing people, one of the number one interview questions I ask, and it seems silly, but is, are you a happy person?
Interesting.
And you'll be so blown away by how many times people stammer when asked that question.
Yeah.
I think that if we hire good human beings, that they will convey those messages. The dichotomy between our operating partners is interesting. Prior to this meeting, I took some notes. We have 1 baby boomer from an operating partner, 4 Gen Xers, and 4 millennials. So you can see the diversity we have there.
Generationally diverse. Casey Biehl is the COO of Fat Boys Pizza out of New Orleans, heading to Alabama. I'm Cam Marston. You're listening to What's Working. We'll be right back.
Is paying a real estate agent worth the money? I'm Angelo DiPaola, the Coastal Connection with eXp Realty. Great real estate agents are like the best doctors. They listen deeply, make your goals their own, stay current on trends that impact your decisions, and have experience navigating unexpected situations. We help our clients make the best real estate decisions along the Gulf Coast. Google me, Angelo DiPaola, the Coastal Connection.
Customer service never goes out of style. In fact, I think it's safe to say that customer service is more valuable and more important now more than ever. Hi, this is Cam Marston. One thing that my over 200 episodes of What's Working has taught me is how important customer service is to building and maintaining a thriving business. It's the growing need for customer service that's led me to partner with one of the state's leading customer service trainers to create our program called Delivering 5-Star Customer Service. Your team will get one 90-minute training session per month for 6 consecutive months. Each session builds on the skills learned the previous month, allowing your customer-facing teams to practice before moving on to the next lesson. And the 6 lessons address everything from appearance to electronic communications to conflict resolution to maintaining a service mindset. Our program travels and is delivered in person at your workplace, nothing virtual. You simply can't practice the level of the skills this course teaches virtually. For more information, email me, cam@cammarston.com, and let's schedule a time to talk. Remember, you have less to fear from outside competition than you do from discourtesy and bad service from inside your own company. Again, email me, cam@cammarston.com, and let's talk about your business. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. On the other side of a Zoom call is Casey Biehl. He's the COO of Fat Boys Pizza out of Metairie, Louisiana. We're talking about growing pizza not franchises. They're all corporately owned, but growing the businesses, how you find the locations. Casey, I want to get into the questions that are a part of the show, the 10 questions that are a part of the show, but I have a question for you about the technology inside the building before we get into that. Is it safe to say that in the past, let's say 20 years ago, it took 20 people to manage the store, or not to manage, but to operate the store fully that you've described to me? And today, due to the changes in technology, it's only taken 10. Is it safe to say that you've cut your workforce in half, yet are still delivering the same quality product at the same frequency?
That is correct. Yes. I mean, the innovations that continue to happen from the entire world, I think, is being revolutionized by technology. Sure. And that 100% is matriculating into the hospitality sector.
So, and even what you were describing to me in the ordering process, you don't have waiters moving the floor. You can have 3 people working the floor, bussing tables, offering to help fill a drink or something like that, whereas previously you needed 8 or 9 due to the number of tables.
Correct. Yeah, we've even implemented self-checkout kiosks in some restaurants in addition to our cashiers, and a lot of consumers prefer to go to that platform. So that as well has mitigated some of the overhead.
Is that a temporary fix, or is that the way forward? Is that fix going to be over once the workforce issues, whatever, get worked out, or is that the way forward?
For us, I think we'll always have a combination, some form of a hybrid. As we discussed earlier, the amount of people that enjoy pizza on a regular basis is very, very diverse. And I think I don't want to be so rigid that we say this is how you have to do it. I think there's people that want to have the human interaction, and there's people that don't. And I think the beauty of what we're evolving to is to offer the opportunity to do both.
Casey Biehl is the Chief Operating Officer of Fat Boys Pizza. And Casey, now we're up to the 10 questions that have become a favorite part of mine for the show, where our goal is to meet you as the influencer in the business, to know who you are. We've learned a lot of the facts and the figures of Fat Boys Pizza. Let's talk to the COO and see a little bit. It's an opportunity to get to meet you. So we'll begin at question number 1, Casey. Your favorite business book?
My favorite business book is the autobiography of Ben Franklin.
No kidding.
So
we have not had that answer yet.
Yeah.
Why that one?
Well, so I travel quite a bit, a lot of driving time, and downloading books has kind of been the way that I help with my travels. And it would never be a book that I think I could push through if I had to read it. But from an audio perspective, it was really interesting. And I just found it very, very, very compelling. This book's almost 200 years old, 150 years old. And the core principle of it really reside with, I think, successful leadership and successful businesses. Ben Franklin came from a lower middle class family and turned into one of the founders of this country. And he was keenly aware, or keenly self-aware. The things he did on a daily basis, he kept his own scorecard, successes and failures, and being honest where his failures are. And he always had a working project. I mean, he was an inventor, a scientist, a diplomat. He owned a business person, and he always committed himself to working on some form of a project. And really, it's just, I think he pushed the limitations of the moral compass, the human mind. And, I'll never obviously come close or sniff a fraction of his success, but being smart enough to recognize, he emulated what people did too. Like, he preached about listening and following what other successful people do and trying it himself. And I subscribe to that, So, yeah.
Ben Franklin, good answer. This is not on the list, but you're yet another one of the interviews I've had of a former athlete. You mentioned that when we were in segment 2, that you have some athletics in your background. Why do athletes tend to show up in the workplace in leadership positions more so than others? Do you have a theory behind that?
I do. I mean, I think one of you look at guys like Bill Belichick, Nick Saban, like these really successful coaches, and you could put them, in my opinion, in any stinking business in the world, and they would have a successful business because they're great leaders. And and it starts with preaching things like team and making sure that people are aligned on what the goals are, and understanding that it's not always about you. It's about the people around you, learning how to adapt. So I think as an athlete, you're just forced to you can't just do it one way every single way and be successful. And I think most of the times athletes are very competitive as well. And if it means self-sacrifice from time to time to get the goal, then I think you'll see that often come through in the business world.
Yeah, it's an obvious, identifiable trend. Is that, and it's often not the star athlete that does very well in the business world. It is an athlete that was somewhere in the middle of the pack, and they had to lean on the capabilities of the teammates versus the star who led and carried the team can show up in the business world and be a bit of a prima donna. Anyway, we've gotten... Go ahead.
Your Alabama audience, I think, would identify with this. Nick Saban, he did a TED talk, and he said getting the right people on the bus and the wrong people off the bus. That's what he used spring practice for. But in that TED talk, a second component of it was that the grinder, the hardworking grinder, will be more successful than the star. And it's, I think it's very, very true. So you know, when you said the people that weren't at the star athlete, like you're nailing the head with this guy here, you know?
Yeah. There's a lot we could go into there. Let's get back to the list because we may not hit all of these, but there are a couple that I want to ask. For example, question 2 is what one trend in the marketplace excites you about your business? Yeah. Having heard that 93% of Americans have had a pizza in the past 30 days should be on that list if it's not the top.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest trend, though, for me is, it makes it hard, too, because pizza becomes very personalized. Everybody has an opinion. Some people like sweet sauce, spicy sauce, thick crust, doughy crust, crunchy crust, thin crust. Yeah. So all the varieties are to individuals become their favorite. So you can't make everybody happy in the pizza space. But the thing that excites me the most is the technological advancements that are starting to infiltrate into that segment. We used to use these deck ovens that required a very skilled technical component of cooking a pizza, which is the most important thing you can do. And we recently purchased these deck ovens that have conveyors in there. They have a stone still, so you're not losing the quality of cooking the pizza on a stone, but it allows for the machine to do the cooking and not worrying about the rotation and all of the technical aspects of it.
Yeah. I think I've seen what you're talking about. All right, number 3, what one trend in the marketplace worries you?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that I'm worried about, I think there's a recession that's occurring. The challenges with sales. We discussed earlier a small pivot that we made with implementation of smaller footprints, lower occupancy costs, some drive-throughs. With that, we have, I think, less. I know we have less upside from a revenue standpoint, but less risks as well.
It sounds like your goal is not, let's take Mobile. I see on the list you've got Birmingham in your sights as well. Your goal is not to just be in Mobile. Your goal is not just to be in Birmingham. It's to be in the right place in Mobile and Birmingham. And you could set up a store somewhere and realize, you know what, this is not near the high school that we know that we need to be. This is not near the family orientation that we know need to be. That would be in hindsight, a mistake as you don't see the foot traffic. Anyway, I'm answering your question for you. I'll stop doing that. Agree, biggest business mistake you've made?
I look back on my career and there's been a lot of personal sacrifice that is required, I think, but losing sight of the importance of having a good home foundation. Work for large corporations, and there's a corporate ladder that I think everybody's assertively and aggressively trying to climb. And with that, there's some personal carnage that occurs. And when I reflected earlier about COVID-19 and what caused this decision, sitting at home with my wife and my son and realizing how special I actually have it was, a moment where I'm like, gosh, I'm a fool. I need to cherish this.
I think there's a lot of people that had those, I call them CTJs, come to Jesus moments, when they realized, and COVID brought a lot of them out. It sure did me. I used to live on the road and I don't do nearly as much as I used to do. Some of it is economic, some of it is choice, but it's It changed my perspective about what's important as well. Lots and lots and lots of people have had that same moment. Some of it good. I mean, there's a lot of happier people out there, I think. But the workplace is still reeling. I've got, like I told you, I've got lots of clients out there that are looking for employees. They're using advertisement to find employees because they don't want to come back into the office anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, yeah, COVID did teach us what was important, but where did my workforce go? They're struggling on the other side of it. Okay, we'll keep going. Your favorite news source for business content?
You guys are going to judge me here. First, I like to start my day off with sports. I think that's grounding, and I try to avoid the national news until I have to. I still read the paper every morning. I have Labrador retrievers, and we go in the front yard. We grab the newspaper. As I age, it's getting harder and harder to pick it up, but I'll slowly bend my knees and work my way to the ground and grab it. I used to have a dog that would go get it for me, and I failed with training either one of these guys. But at the end of the day, that's really where I try to stay grounded, is through the paper.
I wish we had a paper in Mobile. They've just eliminated the newspaper. And even before that, it was kind of poor in terms of Mobile coverage. Nevertheless, number 6, which generation do you wish you had more employees? I'm very curious about this answer, considering what you've told me.
Yes, this is my answer. I knew this question was coming, and I smirked when I said he's not going to love this answer. But I think that we want good human beings to work with us. I truly, truly personally love, and from the hourly standpoint, Generation Z. A lot of them are adaptable. They're respectful. They are. This is their first job ever, and we get to introduce them to hospitality. So to me, it's been a good group to work with.
Casey Biehl is the COO of Fat Boys Pizza. We've talked about a little bit how they plan to expand, where they plan to go, and how they make the decisions that they make. Casey, thank you so much. I wish you the best.
Thank you very much, and appreciate your time.
Count on me as a customer. We'll be back after this break. This is Cam Marston in the studio with Cajun Mike. Cajun Mike, what's going on at E3 Pest Control? What you guys doing today that's different?
Well, what we're doing different is we are treating homes that have spray foam installation, and we're able to give them a full bond, whereas other companies are not able to.
How does the treatment work with the spray foam?
Basically, we spray the spray foam with Boar Care. Boar Care absorbs into the spray foam. It prevents termites from landing on it and creating an above-ground carton.
Is there any restrictions or limits to how you can do this, or is it any home with spray foam?
Basically, any home with spray foam. How
do they find you, Cajun Mike?
Find me at 251-850-7378 or e3pest.com.
That's e3pest.com. That was fun. I'm grateful to have met Casey. He's got connections here or a history here in South Alabama, and they're not, obviously, when you've got this much at stake as they do, you don't make random quick decisions to find a new marketplace just to say you're there. It's a logical thought process. And gosh, how many times have I mentioned poor Cortland's Pizza and how much I miss them? I have to admit that once we turned the recording off and before Casey and I ended the Zoom call, I told him a little bit about what Cortland's was like in our neck of the woods, and maybe I could make some introductions for him to take a look at this part of town because we need our pizza place back, quite frankly. We got some great stuff around here, but I miss Cortland's. Now, interestingly, when we turned it off and Casey and I had turned the recording off and Casey and I had a bit of a conversation afterwards, he said something, and I'd like your feedback here from my listeners. Time for you to engage. I'm asking you a favor. We're going to accumulate what I ask as a list, and I'll share it back with you. He said one of the things that in our interview you heard him say, we ask people, are you a happy person? And that answer elicits a response from the candidate, the job candidate, that gives the interviewer some insight into how they treat people and whether they have a hospitality mindset. Casey went on to say one of the things that they look for, and listen to this because I think this is brilliant, people who selfishly enjoy making people happy. Let's break that up a little bit. Selfishly, we're not supposed to be selfish, but they selfishly enjoy like that, making people happy. And when they can find those people, they have found a hospitality mindset. And en route to finding those people, they ask the question, are you a happy person? So here's my request from you, gentle listener. What are some questions that you have come up with in your business that you feel identifies, that does a good job in identifying a candidate for your workplace? What are customized questions that reveal to you that, oh yes, this person is going to work out here? Our experience tells us people that answer this question that we've made up this way will lead to a good hire. Or if some sort of consultant or some sort of book you've read has given you a question to ask a candidate that you feel reveals some great content, share that with me. Let's know, and maybe we can get you on the show to talk about why that question is so important considering what your business is. I think it will be interesting, and we'll share it. I'll create a list. We'll figure out how to you get a copy of the list, and I'll share it amongst listeners. Maybe there's something in there that you can use that will help you hire better. Let's see what we can come up with there. And at the top of the list, we'll put Casey's question of, are you a happy person? As I said a couple times in the show, we've begun offering these little vignettes, 90-second advertisements that are, what we do is record the show and then take the highlights of the show and put it in a 90-second commercial. And that commercial is 15 seconds of teaser, 30 seconds of the commercial, the sponsor, whoever buys the commercial, followed by 45 seconds of the answer to the teaser, which is a 90-second in total. And the people that are buying these things are using them in markets across Alabama to find new hires, to find people. We need people in our market in Huntsville. Let's use this vignette. It'll attract the right person. And I was surprised that as we began to offer these things, that was who is taking them up, and kind of speaks to this crisis we have in employment. Upcoming on a future episode is going to be Josh Duplantis. He's a doctorate. He's got a doctorate in workforce studies or something along those lines. We'll get him to explain more clearly what that is when we get him in the studio, I think next week. And he is going to explain exactly where these workforce challenges are coming from. The baby boom generation continues to retire at 10,000 people per day. That's a lot. And that will go on for the next handful of years. The millennial generation, though a populous generation, is not making up for them. And there are arguments saying that it's taking 1.5 to 2 members of the millennial generation or Gen Z to make up for that baby boomer work ethic. This baby boomer work ethic is something I've heard about my entire career. The boomers love to beat their chest about their work ethic, and now we're beginning to see that maybe there was something to that, as it's proving so difficult to find replacements. All right, that'll wrap us for this week. Show is produced by John Thompson with Biehl Digital. We'll have another show next week, everybody. Thanks for listening. As you likely know, this show originates as a radio show broadcast across the state of Alabama, and it continues to grow in both radio listeners and market. After it's formatted for radio, we then turn it into this podcast. Please share it with those you think would find it interesting, and subscribe to the podcast on my YouTube page, where you can leave messages and your thoughts and your comments, and I'll certainly get back in touch. Finally, if you're a fan of the show, please offer a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can find my book called What Works on Amazon.com. In it, I highlight the top 10 ideas from the first 200 episodes of the show. Mind you, they're not the top 10 best episodes. They're the top 10 best ideas. Many times the same ideas are brought up again and again by different guests, and we dig into those ideas in such a way that they'll be easily applicable for your business. Simply go to Amazon and enter my name, and you'll find What Works as well as my other books. Chapter titles include How to Find a Niche, Innovation, Building Teams, and so forth. To learn more about the workshops and seminars I offer, go to cammarston.com. There you can view clips of my work, view workshop titles, view my reviews, case studies, customer lists. It's all there. If you'd like a free copy of one of the chapters of my book, enter your email address at the bottom of the homepage at cammarston.com. And from that site, you can email me directly. I always love to hear from you. You'll also find me on social media. Find Cam Marston on all the social media platforms, and you may need to enter the numeral 1. There's one other Cam Marston out there, and that numeral 1 distinguishes me from him from time to time. So if you're unsure if it's me or not, enter that numeral 1 after my name, and it should do the trick. On a more personal and less professional side, I record weekly commentaries that air across Alabama on Alabama Public Radio twice each day on Fridays called Keeping It Real. They've won statewide and national awards. They're simple observations on the world as it goes on around me, and they're only a few minutes long. They're a passion. You can find them on the same podcast app you're using to listen to this. Finally, if you're interested in advertising on this podcast or the radio show, reach out. I've worked hard to cultivate a specific listener, and I can tell you all about them, and I have many different options for helping you reach them. Thanks again for listening. We'll have another episode available soon.